Are we witnessing the worst Pacers season in franchise history? On today's episode, I look back into Pacers history and I look back at what was the worst season we've ever had as a franchise. I look at where we drafted that year and then how it compares today. And then at the end of this episode, I want to make my case for why the Pacers finally deserve the number one pick in the NBA draft. All coming up next on the Pacer Pulse podcast. What is up, Pacer Nation? Welcome to the Pacer Pulse podcast, the heartbeat of Indiana basketball. I'm your host, Sean Trader. And guys, as I stated at the top of this episode, I want to talk about how this could possibly be the worst season the Pacers have ever witnessed in their franchise history. So, like I said in the beginning, I wanted to go back and look through Pacers history. I wanted to look at when was our worst season, and where did we draft in that draft during that season? So I had to look back all the way to the 1984-1985 season, and that was the last time, that was when we had our worst record ever in franchise history. We were 22-60. So really bad record, and right now I would say we're on track to even be worse than that this year. But during that season, we landed the second overall pick. And in that draft, we drafted Wayman Tisdale. He was a forward/center from Oklahoma. So just to give a little more context into like the draft and all that during that time, early years of the NBA lottery system were obviously different. They didn't have flat odds like we do now. It basically kind of went off like the worst teams, closer to that, I would say. So that's why we obviously ended up having one of the, like a top two pick. But we didn't land the number one pick despite the fact of our terrible record. And you won't guess who ended up with the number one overall pick that year. That was none other than the New York Knicks. Yes, you heard that right. That was the New York Knicks, our rivals for the longest time. And I didn't really even know this, so this kind of even paints the picture as to why they're even kind of always been a rival to us, even outside of just the playoff battles and all that. But the New York Knicks ended up getting the number one overall pick that year. And they drafted Patrick Ewing. So this is like one of those biggest what-if moments, I would say, in franchise history. One of the worst teams in the league that year. Our worst season in franchise history. We don't end up getting the number one pick. We get Wayman Tisdale, who turned out to be a pretty solid player throughout his career. Like, he wasn't a bust, but he wasn't a star that just propelled your team. He was a 15 to 16 point per game scorer in his career. He was a solid player, like I said, but just not like a superstar. Compared to like where you expect or like what kind of player you expect to get from the second overall pick, he didn't live up to those expectations. I mean, at least he was a rotation player, but just not a guy that's going to change your franchise. Not a guy like, let's say, Patrick Ewing did for the New York Knicks, where he helped them win for a long period of time, and he was just a vocal point to their team for, I mean, I don't know how long, for years and years and years, let's say. So I thought it was very interesting to see that the 1984-85 season was the last time we have been this bad. I mean, I think outside of that, we've always been treading water, or at least been in the middle ground, I would say. We've always been a team that's kind of been in the middle for most of our franchise's history, besides for a few good seasons, of course. But it just goes to show that we're not a team that just goes out there and tries to lose on purpose all the time. I mean, this was over 40 years ago where I had to look back and to see like when our worst season was in franchise history. So now I wanted to like just kind of fast track into what we are seeing today currently. So right now we are currently 15 and like 50. So, and I'm saying this after we've just surpassed our previous franchise losing streak of 13 games in a row. We're now at 15 games. That's a new franchise record. We beat our own record in the same season. And it's just, I'm not sure when that's going to slow down, given the schedule this month and towards the end of this season. I'm not sure when the next win's going to come, guys. So this could end up extending to 20 games for all I know. But currently we have a .215 win percentage right now, which is dead awful. It's the worst in the NBA, worse than the Kings, worse than the Wizards, worse than the Nets. I mean, who would ever thought of that going into this season? We'd be worse than any of those teams. But the projected finish as of right now, as we have about 13, 14 games left in the season, our projected finish is going to be around 18-64, which would be worse than we were in the 84-85 season when we were 22-60. So just take that into perspective, guys. This is our worst season in 40 years. Just let me put that out there right now. So the floor, we could possibly be as worse as 17-65, or the ceiling, we're 20-62. Either way, we're still going to end up being worse than that team was in 84 and 85 when we drafted Wayman Tisdale, second overall. So just a historical comparison, like I said, 84-85, they won 22 games. We're definitely going to be worse than that this year unless we just go on some crazy run, but we have a pretty hard schedule for the rest of the year. I just don't see that really happen. But like I said in the beginning, are we watching the worst Pacer season in franchise history? And that's just such a baffling question to even ask, Pacer Nation, because given after we just made the finals, we just came off this finals run, this magical run where that was our best season in franchise history. And then to follow up with our worst season in franchise history is almost just mind-boggling. I mean, I know the injuries and all that definitely played a role in all this, as we're like a bottom 5 team in terms of injuries that have affected us throughout this season. I think us and then like the Thunder have been in the top 5 too, as like the most injured teams. But we're in the top 5, and obviously that's a big reason as to why we've lost so much this year. But also, I think we've shifted our perspective at some point during this season. But just with the injuries to our star players like Halliburton, with Siakam getting a lot of injuries after All-Star break, which I think that's just sitting him as well, if I'm going to be honest, guys. But to start the season, the injuries to TJ McConnell, Nimhard, even Matherin, who else? Shepard was hurt at one point. I mean, you can almost name every guy on this roster. Obi Toppin, of course. Every guy on this roster almost just had injuries. And then we lost Miles Turner, where we didn't have a starting center. And just these multiple losing streaks in this season. I just have to ask this big question. Is this rock bottom? Or is this the start of something better? So I do think that, obviously, there's been a lot of silver linings from this year. Just like as there was in 84 and 85 when we got the second overall pick. Granted, we didn't strike gold with that pick. We got a rotation player, but it's not like we got a franchise-changing player. But the silver lining to the season, guys, because as I watch this season and as a fan, it's hard to watch teams and like cheer for losing, even though that's going to be the biggest benefit to your team, to help propel your team, hopefully into the future, to be a perennial just contender for the next 3 to 5 years is what we're hoping for if we land this top 4 pick. But a silver lining is we're going to strengthen our draft position. We have young players that are developing. Before Furphy got hurt, we got some good progression from him. We've seen Shepard and Walker improve on their horrible starts to the season. I mean, we're seeing Cam Jones, Quentin Jackson, even though he's a little older. Just some of these different guys that are getting more of an opportunity. Kobe Brown, since we traded for him, seeing what he's got in him. And just, we've found our center of the future by trading Matherin, Isaiah Jackson, and those few picks that we traded. Yes, was it a lot to give up for Zubats? I think it was, but it was worth it because we obviously need a starting center, guys. I mean, we knew that pretty early in the get-go, that Jay Huff, that Tony Bradley, that Wiseman, and whoever else, Micah Potter, whoever else has been on this team as a center at some point, they weren't going to cut it. That wasn't going to be the answer. We all know that. Even if I like Jay Huff as like a second or third string center, is he a guy that's going to be a starter? No. And we clearly saw that, even if he was leading the league in blocks. And then he's at least provides the stretch out element a little bit as well. If he could just raise his percentages, that's a whole nother topic. But we just knew that we needed to solve that position, especially going into the next season, because we knew this season was lost already. We knew after a certain point, and that's one thing I'm going to commend the front office and like Rick and the coaching staff for leaning into, is the fact that they realized that, hey, this isn't going to be our year. Of course, we already knew that with Halliburton being hurt, but we knew that even more so with all these other injuries. We weren't going to be this sneaky like 6 through 8 seed team. So I think they leaned into the losing a little bit after a while. Even if they want to say otherwise, you got to say those things, or the league's going to be like, what are you doing? Just like, obviously they're not going to say we're losing on purpose. So there's one big question I want to ask after all this season, and just now that we're close to the end of the season, it's something that I'm really pondering is, would you trade a terrible season right now for a potential franchise player? We have that opportunity right now, guys. So obviously, since we traded the pick, in terms of just protections, obviously if it lands 5 through 9, it goes to the Clippers. But will this season be worth it if we're able to land a top 4 pick? And I just got to say, I think so. And this is going to lead me into my last segment that I kind of wanted to talk on here, guys, is that fact that I think it's finally time that the Pacers are rewarded the number one pick in the NBA draft. And I say that because, like I started from the get go here, guys, it kind of built into my whole argument for this last segment. We have not been this bad since 84, 85. Think about that, guys. Think about the teams that have been like rewarded number one picks that have been awful throughout all the years and have just never had even close to the seasons that we have had throughout our whole tenure as a franchise. They've been rewarded picks. This is the this it's been 40 years, guys, since we've been this bad as a franchise. So it's pretty eye-opening when you look at it in that lens, and we got the second overall pick in that season. And then I think it was like a couple years after that, we got Rick Smits like third overall. But outside of that, we've obviously never had the number one pick. And it's just, we've always been a team that's kind of tread water, right? And I looked this up too. We're around 15th to like 18th in terms of franchise, like our franchise's winning percentage. Out of all the NBA franchises, we rank 15th or 18th in terms of how many wins our franchise has won. So that's obviously smack dab in the middle of the entire league, pretty much. So, like I said, we've always been kind of like a middle of the pack team. Even when we didn't have necessarily the talent, we never leaned into like a full rebuild. We never leaned into losing. We've always tried to build around the margins to try to get the most out of our teams. We've always tried to sign certain guys in free agency or trade for certain guys. I mean, I think about the Bogdan Bogdanovic teams with like a Sabonis and then Brogdon, those guys, CJ Warren, and then like CJ Watson, like when we had those teams, and then even like the Jeff Teague and Paul George team with young Miles Turner, and then Monte Ellis, Rodney Stuckey. Like, and I'm not even thinking back as far as I could, but those are just some of those prime team examples where we've always tried to just tread water. We've always just tried to make the playoffs no matter what, even if we were the 7th or 8th seed. And that was even before the play-in, of course. So it's just, we've always been a team that has always tried to win. We never bottomed out. We've never fallen into that, what do you want to call it? That purgatory, or we've always been in purgatory, I guess, but we've just never been a bottoming out team. Let's say like the Sixers, who went through like 6 years of just losing horribly bad on purpose, or however long it was. I might be overextending how long they were losing on purpose for, but you get what I'm saying. It felt like an eternity where they were just trying to get the number one pick, where they got Embiid, Ben Simmons, Jahlil Okafor, Nerlens Noel, Michael Carter-Williams. I mean, that was at least 5 years plus where they were just losing on purpose. So we've never done that, guys. We've never been that team. And like I said, we've always been treading water. We've always at least shown integrity in this league to always try to put out a winning product. And maybe that was always like, what do you want to call it? I don't know. Maybe they were just self-benefiting in a sense where Herb Simon was always just knew that to put people in the seats, excuse me, you got to have a team that's out there that's playing decent basketball. So maybe that was self-beneficiating, like beneficial to him, where he was just like, all right, I got to put people in the seats. That's why I'm always going to put out halfway decent teams, even if it meant we may not have these franchise-altering players. Maybe we're not ever going to pick high in the draft, but maybe we could pick somebody in the middle of the lottery that's going to be decent. I mean, we got lucky with Paul George and a few other guys, but you know what I mean? It's just, they've always tread water, and I think that's maybe the only, like, in their own self-benefit too. But it's just, I think we can make, if like, I'm presenting an argument to the league right now, guys. If I'm like, hey, NBA, and obviously we know it's like a lottery system, whatever, but I know some people think it's fixed and whatnot, but we could be like, hey, look at our franchise history right now. This is our worst season we've had in over 40 years. This is our worst season. We've always tried to win. We've always tried to put out a product out there that's respectable. And honestly, for a while, guys, I don't know if you guys felt this way as Pacer fans too, but we were always just that team that was like, hey, we're a tough out for the better teams that go on to win a title. That's how I've always felt about the Pacers for the longest time, where it was like, we're just that tough out. And like, you always hear the coaches are like, yeah, they're a tough team. They play hard. That's always like the cop-out answers from other coaches where they're like, yeah, they're not a great team, but they play hard and they made us have to try a little bit. You know what I mean? It's just like, cool. It was like a moral victory, but it's not like anything you want to hang your hat on, if you get what I'm saying, Pacer Nation. So, and then the fact that the Spurs, this is like another little argument I want to bring in here. The Spurs They were rewarded the number one pick the year Victor Wembanyama was obviously in the draft. They were literally tied for the second worst team in the NBA. Everybody knew that they were purposely losing that season to try to get Wembanyama, and it was even talked about how Wembanyama wanted to go to the Spurs and all that. So you're going to reward the Spurs with the number one overall pick when they clearly were trying to lose. I mean, they were clearly tanking for a couple years there. They were completely bottoming out too. We're not even trying to bottom out. We literally traded for a top 15 center in Zubats. We have Siakam, who's an all-star. We have pretty much the core of our team from our finals run besides our franchise player in Halliburton. It's not like we're going to be stinking and like be at the bottom of the league for like the next 5 years. This is like a 1 year thing, and we're going to be back into hopefully title contention. That is what our team is trying to do and push for. So it's just like, let me know what you think in the comments on YouTube, Pacer Nation, if my argument makes any sense, if you agree. I think it's time that we rewarded that pick. Maybe we're doing a little bit of tanking right now. And yeah, does it look egregious? It does. I mean, we're playing Jalen Swanson, or I might even be getting his name wrong. We're playing Swanson like 36 minutes a game. Granted, I'm glad he's getting the opportunity, but and Taylor Peters playing like 20 minutes. I've seen him play 36 minutes in a game, one game. I mean, we're clearly trying to lose to a certain extent, but it's just, I think it's about time, guys. And obviously we're going to lean this way because of the protections on our pick this year that we sent to the Clippers. But man, I just think now is a time more than ever. All right, if this is the only first overall pick that we ever get in franchise history, I would understand it. At least give us this pick this year, NBA. Please, Adam Silver, give us this number one pick. We deserve it. We've always been a team that's shown integrity to the NBA, besides this year, of course. And I just think that it's our time, guys. It's our time. And I just think that we're finally due for this. So that's kind of my full argument for all this, guys. I mean, we weren't even like the Pistons, who they were purposely trying to lose for years on end, and like they got the fifth overall pick outside after they got Cade Cunningham, number one overall. So like, why can't we have that sort of fortune? And even the Warriors that year, that's like my favorite example for us too, guys, where the Warriors kind of had that gap year where they had all those injuries and then they end up getting the second overall pick. Yeah, they drafted James Wiseman. It didn't work out, but that's just the luck of the lottery sometimes. But they still got the second overall pick in that gap year. So we are definitely on that spectrum of like a Warriors compared to any other tanking team that we've ever seen in NBA history. So I just think that I know a lot of people were discouraged whenever the fines were coming out and we got fined for sitting Siakam and not playing him. But it's like, guys, I still think that like at the end of the day, we still deserve a top 4 pick, regardless of like whatever fine, and the NBA may try to set an example of us like they were with the Jazz as well. I just think it's finally time for our due diligence that the NBA finally just is like, hey, here's your number one pick, guys. And I'm not saying it's fixed. Let me don't. There is some weird things that happen where it's hard not to believe that it's not fixed. Like when the Mavericks got their number one overall pick with a very slim odds after they traded Luka to the Lakers. I'm sorry, but that one to me, I'm always going to think that was rewarded to them. Like when the Bulls got Derrick Rose at their number one overall pick, when they had like a 0.8% chance of moving up, happens to just go to his hometown in Chicago, a team that had always been reeling ever since Jordan retired, excuse me. So it's just, yeah, there's some things throughout history. Even the Wembanyama year, I think, is a little fishy too. Even though the Spurs were one of the worst teams, it's still a little fishy to me, guys. So maybe I'm putting my conspiracy hat on a little bit. And I believe some of that is a little fixed. That's why it's like, this is our year. So that's kind of like where I wanted to leave my argument on that, guys. I just think that it's finally time for us to get either Caleb Wilson, either AJ DeBonsa. Now that he's been knocked out of the tournament, we'll see. We'll see like more. We'll hear more about him, I'm sure, as the weeks come before the lottery happens. With Darren Peterson even, or with Cam Boozer. I think we finally deserve one of these guys, and I think that just adding one of these blue chip prospects to our team, next to Halliburton, Siakam, Zubats, Nembhard, Neesmith, I mean, it just sounds very scary for the rest of the NBA if this happens. And then, if you look at all these teams, all these other teams that have built their team, like the Spurs right now, people would consider them contenders, right? Well, they built their team through trades, but a lot of it was through the draft as well. So they're one of those teams that like probably built most of their team through the draft, I would say. Obviously, they got their franchise guy through the draft, but they traded for De'Aaron Fox. But they drafted Stephon Castle. They drafted Dylan Harper, of course, too. And then even the Thunder, who are seen as perennial threats, of course, and for good reason. They traded for Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. They drafted Jalen Williams. They drafted Chet Holmgren with a top 3 pick. And then just the rest of their roster, they got Casey Wallace with the draft pick. They traded for Caruso. They signed Isaiah Hartenstein. So I mean, you can't just always build through the draft. And honestly, our team has always been built through trades for the most part. Besides Nimhard, he's really been our only draft pick if we want to count Walker and Shepard, I guess, too. But everybody else was just traded for. So I think it's just maybe this pick is like our final piece of the puzzle where we add one more draft pick and bam, we're a title contender for years on end. That was something I was really kind of thinking about too, guys. It really just goes to show like we've always been a team, at least for a while, that builds through the draft. We're not somebody that brings people in through free agents. We haven't been a team that bottoms out. And I just think the NBA can reward something like that. So, and then I just want to like maybe touch on at the very end of this what I've seen from Zubats his first 5 games. And I just think that he's going to provide a lot more value, especially when the full team is back, guys. I think that him playing with a lot of these guys that probably aren't going to be in the rotation as much as they are. I mean, he's playing next to Walker, who's playing like 30 plus minutes a game. Shepard playing 20, he's playing his same role. But Slauson, who's playing like 30 minutes. I mean, TJ McConnell, who's playing a lot of minutes right now. He's not going to be playing next to TJ that much. He's going to be playing next to Halliburton, Nimhard. He's only played with like 1 game. D. Smith, he's played a lot with, so that's encouraging, but he hasn't played with Siakam at all. So it's just, you may see the numbers, and he's been playing uneven minutes so far, but you may see the numbers and be kind of like discouraged from what you've seen if you're going off purely off box score, but he's clearly like transformed the team. And a lot of these games where we've had a lot of competitive moments, even when eventually it gets to be like a blowout like it was against Portland, where we were pretty close throughout that game, then it just got blown wide open, then we brought it back. So it's just, you can see what he's adding to the team. He's adding pick and roll dynamic that we haven't had probably even since Sabonis or even before him. It's been a long time. We haven't had a big we can just throw the ball to down low. He didn't shoot well last game against Portland, but he did have some really good moves inside. He just wasn't getting shots to fall, and he's going to get his feet under him still as he gets used to how we play. But I've really liked what I've seen. He's been able to like guard on the perimeter a little bit too. He hedges on a lot of pick and rolls, which is surprising to me. And I think it's been mixed results, but I think it's getting better as we've seen the games go on. He's just an awesome target inside. And I think his number one thing I've been impressed with the most is his passing, guys. We haven't had this sort of passing, obviously, since Sabonis, he's a better passer than Zubats, but Zubats, he's commanding doubles and like triple teams in the post, and he's able to make reads out of that. And that's just going to be hugely beneficial, especially to like Nimhards, the Halliburtons, the Siakams, all these other guys, Neesmiths, that are good off cutting and just like going to have like spot up open threes available to them after playing off of like Zubac in this way. It's just we haven't had a guy that commands like that sort of doubles in the post in an extremely long time. So I've seen a lot of positive things from Zubac, and I'm excited to see at least like how this ends for the rest of this season. I can't wait to see his progress. It's at least made the games exciting to me watching a guy like Zubac. So I don't know how you guys feel, Pacer Nation. If you've enjoyed watching him out there, if you've enjoyed seeing what he's been bringing to the team so far and just what he can add to this team when we're at full strength. I'm very encouraged by it, so just let me know what you think in the YouTube comments as well, guys. And if you could please leave a like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. It always means a lot. I always like hearing your guys' opinions too. It's fun just talking the Pacers with you guys, so I always enjoy that. And then if you could please leave 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. It helps the podcast grow as well. And it just means a lot that you guys listen, and I want to build this community and make it the #1 fan podcast out there, guys, just where we can build this whole community up to be so fan-centric and focused, where we can have a place where we can come and talk about the Pacers and just enjoy that kind of back and forth banter, if you get what I'm saying. So always fun talking with you guys on there, but I can't appreciate you enough, guys, for listening right now, Pacer Nation, and I will talk to you soon.